Hey guys, it's Harv. If you've been dabbling with AI but struggling to move past experiments, this conversation today will show you what it takes to make AI part of the way your business actually runs. Our guest today, Luke Alexander, has led his agency through one of the most ambitious AI transformations I've seen in an independent agency. From rolling out Microsoft Copilot across over 300 staff to bringing client facing AI offers to putting governance and ethics in place so it sticks. So, if you're asking yourself questions like, how do I operationalize AI rather than just experiment with it? Where can AI make the biggest impact? And how do you balance innovation with the uncomfortable truth that AI might replace services that you sell? You'll get answers to that in this episode. Thanks for listening to The Handbook. This episode is brought to you by Scoro. And shout out to them for supporting my new project with The Handbook, the Business Maturity Quiz. Here's why this matters. Most service businesses grow without a clear benchmark. You feel busy, maybe even successful, but without something to measure against, you don't actually know if you're set up to scale. That's where the quiz I've designed comes in. In 3 minutes, you'll see where you stand across 5 key pillars: people, process, tech, data, and growth. More importantly, you'll get tailored advice on what to focus on next to level up. Most service businesses, including agencies and consultancies, stall at level 1 or 2. Only 5% ever reach the top, level 5. So where do you think you sit? Find out now at bit.ly/assess-business-maturity. Once again, that's bit.ly/assess-business-maturity. I'll include a link in the episode notes. Now, let's get to the podcast. Hey, all. One of the things I keep hearing from ops leaders is the sense of unease around AI. On the one hand, everyone knows it's important. It's the topic in every boardroom and every client conversation. On the other hand, a lot of folks are still just dabbling. A few ChatGPT prompts here, teams and individuals using an array of tools here and there, but often nothing that feels truly embedded in the way the business runs. That tension is understandable. Rolling out new tools at scale has never been easy. There's dozens of new AI tools cropping up every month. And when those tools threaten to change the very services you sell or the roles your people do, the stakes feel even higher. Which brings us to today's guest. Luke Alexander is Chief Digital and AI Officer at an independent marketing, media, and communications agency where he's leading one of the most ambitious AI transformations I've ever seen in the sector. Luke first joined through their graduate scheme back in 2006 and later moved into a public sector role with London Legacy Development Corporation, where he worked on turning the London 2012 Olympics into a lasting legacy for the city. After that, he launched his own technology consultancy, Marmello, deliberately designed to stay small and focused on solving difficult technology problems. But in 2021, he sold that consultancy back to bringing him full circle to where his career started. Now at he's in a very different role, spearheading their AI and digital transformation. His leadership has already been recognized in the BIMA 100, honoring the UK's most influential digital leaders. I am so excited for you to hear today's conversation. Let's get into it. Luke, welcome to the podcast. Pleasure to have you here today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's delightful to be here.
So you are Chief Digital and AI Officer at I'd love to start with an understanding of what that role entails.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? But it's a new role. It's something quite exciting for us as a business because, we're a marketing communications and media agency. So we're predominantly client-faced. Stepping away from that and looking at ourselves, looking at how we apply AI to our own business operationally, how we can help our clients overcome operational hurdles they have around using AI. So it's a very new, very exciting thing. And certainly, like my background is in digital, but it's also in comms. I wear a lot of hats, and I'm finding that all of those hats are coming into use in this role as well. So I've been doing it about 2 years. I say it's new. 2 years has flown by in this world of AI.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the role is, building the agency of the future, right? Transforming our business, transforming what we do, using AI as a kind of catalyst for change.
When we spoke previously, I was surprised to hear that you have 4 full-time people focused on AI work at for. That sounds like a lot. And, apart from ChatGPT, a lot of agencies and consultancies are still just dabbling with AI and just people sporadically using tools that they come across. And secondly, the other thing that came to mind is that agency and consultancy leaders often have a lot of anxiety around hiring non-billable roles. So, hearing 4 individuals dedicated to AI at 4, that was, yeah, super surprising and impressive. So tell us a bit about why and what those individuals do.
So, I mean, 100%, if I was listening to this podcast, I would be wondering what we do as well, and whether it's paid off, whether it's been worth the investment. So what we found is that, on a day-to-day basis, people talk about AI like it automatically saves you time, or automatically you just use AI and it will somehow shave some time off.
Hmm.
Shortcut. That's not really how organizations work, and it's certainly not how individual workflows work. So if you have someone who could save 15 minutes a day, right, on a particular task, but it's 15 minutes, it's not a massive issue for them to do it. It's a pain, but actually working out, will AI solve it? How to use AI to solve it? Am I doing it properly? That's many hours of work. And if you don't have any expert help, it's potentially impossible for you to really know whether you're doing it right. So
Hmm.
to achieve any sort of productivity gains in the scale that we think agencies like are going to need to see in the coming years, coming months, you need that central resource. So it's a kind of center of excellence role, which is not to say that we're not part billable as well, by the way. I mean, we do
Hmm.
quite a lot of work helping clients do the same thing. And that's, increasingly important part. But without a central support, without a center of excellence, it's so hard
Hmm.
for businesses, organizational teams to keep up with the pace of change. So it's unfortunately just the price of doing business. If you want to see significant change and growth, you have to make that like an investment, an important part of what you are doing centrally.
Absolutely.
And it is an expert role at the moment.
Yeah. That is really, really impressive. And I think it sets a benchmark. I was having a conversation, I think, just the other week where, people were talking about time being taken away from kind of delivery roles to do some experimentation and what that means for utilization and all that kind of stuff. And this is a really interesting approach that your team's taken up for.
Absolutely. And, I've got some incredibly intelligent, like creative colleagues.
Hmm.
Um, but it's unfair to expect them to suddenly turn around and say, I'm going to spend 3 hours a day away from all the stuff I'm supposed to be doing
Hmm.
to like try something that might not work. And if we can take that away from them and say, we tried this, we tried this, we tried this, maybe this is a nice route to go down, suddenly they become super creative about how they use AI. And it gives them certainty. I've always said from a central point of view, the one most important thing you can give that you owe to your employees is clarity around AI, because it's such an unclear landscape. That means they know what's allowed, they know what's not allowed, but also they know that within those confines, there's freedom to experiment. You give them permission, you give them the space to experiment, and that pays massive dividends. So,
Hmm.
yeah, no, it's hugely important.
So, you were giving the example of inefficiencies that need to be sorted, and maybe that's something these individuals are in your team looking at, better ways of working and stuff like that for the business operations. Are they also looking at creative outputs and that kind of use of AI? Is that also part of the remit?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything, I mean, I AI use and splitting into kind of 3 buckets,
Mm.
which are incrementally useful. So you've got what most people think of, which is like the assistive uses that, maybe you go to ChatGPT for some advice, you throw some ideas around, very valuable, but it is assistive. You're still doing the job. You're still making it. There's the automation, which a lot of people see as like the holy grail. We won't need a full-time person to do this anymore, or, we can have them doing more stuff. And that's fantastic too.
Hmm.
But it's still just, the same thing that your organization's been doing. Maybe it's faster, maybe it's high quality, whatever. The third bucket, which is where all of the, in my mind, like real value sits, is in transformation. And that's when you take a step back and you say, okay, pretend we just started this business tomorrow.
Hmm.
Like, what would we be doing? How would we start it? Who would we have? What kind of roles would they be doing? Where would we use AI? And suddenly you get all these amazing outputs from it. So in terms of like creative outputs and what we give to our clients, it's really important that we are delivering them work that is future proof and future looking. not just because of margins and because of productivity and because of X, Y, Z, but because, we want to be delivering things that have genuine value in it, in what will be probably a very new, unusual marketplace. So no, it's completely universal across the business, the way we work.
So, from what I understand, being so tech forward wasn't always the case at Ford. That's what you were telling me. Can you, for our listeners, tell us what the situation was like a few years ago and why this changed so quickly?
Yeah. I mean, I should say, in defense of my amazing colleagues in like performance marketing, we've had pockets of absolute technical genius, did creative technology solutions, but, core operationally, we were off premises. We had, it was fine, it worked fine, but it was not super future looking. So we were actually in a situation which was quite unusual, which meant that when we were switching on a lot of our AI tools like Copilot, we were also doing a massive changeover to cloud-based file systems, all that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And it was really quite useful. It's interesting because a lot of the organizations I work with are doing things more incrementally. There's a real benefit to making a big change and giving you that momentum, particularly now, because you can't stop with AI. You can't stand back and take a breath. You can't say, let's give it 6 months and see how it happens.
Hmm.
You do genuinely have to like keep momentum going. So it was quite nice to have that push and then keep running rather than stop and start, stop and start, stop and start. But yeah, it's been a busy 2 years for us for sure.
That is exciting. And I think there is this kind of momentum and feeling that you get that this is a really kind of innovative place when you're just leaning into that change and that transformation. So yeah, I can see the benefits. So today I'm keen to hear what the rest of us can learn from your journey. Can you tell us a bit about the AI tools or methodologies in play at Four? And then I'd love to hear how you operationalize those, taking them from just experiments. Of course, you mentioned that you've got your AI team, but taking them from experiments into kind of business as usual.
Yeah. So there's a couple of levels on which we do this. So I'll start with the kind of business as usual stuff. So start with the kind of approach we've taken, which is around AI fluency. So what we found when we started rolling out, so we have Copilot available to all our staff, for
Hmm.
example. We have for over a year now, since it was possible actually to put it live. So we've had it available for everyone. We knew that it wouldn't just get adopted by default, and we planned for a huge amount of training, which I think makes sense.
Hmm.
What we have discovered though is that the training is great, but it only gets you so far. As I think, I mentioned earlier, the hand holding, or we call it coaching, but the sort of really helping people understand what is actually going on, what this exciting new technology actually does, like how it works. It doesn't mean everyone has to become like a machine learning engineer, but like everyone has to have a sense of what's different, right? It's not like Word and Excel. It's not a simple tool that you can learn to use. It's quite nuanced, I guess. So we have this AI fluency approach where we've really taken people, which help them identify use cases. And I think a lot of the terminology around AI puts people off. Like use cases gets talked about a lot, and it basically means things that you could make better, like
Hmm.
pain points in your current organization. There's loads of frameworks. Christopher Penn from Trust Insights, who's well worth looking up if you haven't encountered him. He's got his TRIPS framework and as a way of identifying which use case to go for. But fundamentally, if you ask people, what are the things about your job in your particular interaction with your customers
Hmm.
or your internal customers or, the people you relate to, your stakeholders, what are the pain points? You'll quickly come up with a massive list of things that you can apply AI to. So that's been a bit of a learning in terms of, we knew it wasn't just, give it to them and they'll use it.
Hmm.
We thought the training piece would be enough, but it has required us to adopt that kind of AI fluency approach. So that's on things like, using it for, speeding up workflows, using it for first drafts of things, using it for like content creation. All of those things required like a bit of trial and error, a bit of never forward.
Hmm.
Then there's on the other end, there's the tools that we built. So these are specific things where we've centrally recognized that something is possible,
Hmm.
but can't be done by the people using the tools the day-to-day tools that we have. So we have within our team the capability to do some essentially just little coding projects that get us from, where we need to be to a new tool. So for example, we had a localization project really, where we had a really good set of strategies around media buying for a particular client. I can't name them, unfortunately. We had a particular set of strategies that worked really well. And we were working across about 120 different territories. We had all these amazing insights for people around the business who knew these territories inside out. We have all these resources we could go to, databases, things like that. Combining all of those things and turning it into a per territory playbook was just beyond the capabilities of the tools that everyone had access to. So recognizing that, pulling it into a central thing, running a quick pilot to make sure it worked, testing it and the outputs with a tiny horizon, right? We're talking like 3 or 4 days from start to finish. That kind of project works really well. Where I've seen people fall apart, definitely like some of the organizations I work with, to no fault of their own, the traditional approach from an IT point of view, for example, is to say, you're talking 3 months, 4 months, whatever. And the piloting is a lot more around definable outputs, around a definable test plan, all of which is very admirable. But with AI use, actually it's real proof of concepts. Like, does it work? Can it be work? Have we? And to do that, you do need a sort of a very agile with a small A, not a big A mindset to make that actually work, I think.
I think those larger projects end up getting quite bogged down and they become quite, I can't think of a better word right now other than just nightmarish too, because you're trying to carve out a huge amount of time when you likely don't have a dedicated team working on it. So,
and even with, we just talked obviously about, we have a dedicated team and it's large for our organization, like for our industry. We're all around. I mean, it's not a relaxed, let's take some time to think it through approach. And part of that is resource, but a bigger part of that is just, it moves too fast. If you take an AI to a specialist tool off the shelf now and test it over 6 months, it's irrelevant with the test work because the state of the art will have moved on so much that you probably got 3 or 4 other things you should have tested alongside it that you're now running behind on. So I've seen, not with my clients particularly, but with other organizations, people investing huge amounts of money in, building sort of vector databases for RAG, things like that, big sort of significant projects that are based on where the technology was in March. But then when you launch it in August, they've been superseded because you've got Copilot that can just connect through and access that data already or whatever it might be. So it's very easy to spend a huge amount of money and time, I think, on things that you feel you regret having spent so much time on. And we know what that leads to, right? You've spent so much time in it, you want to use it. And certainly, like, I've talked to friends in other organizations who are stuck using the organization provided AI chatbot they built 7 months ago that can't do anything that a modern AI can. So yeah, no, it's totally true.
really, really good examples. So is this kind of approach that you've taken, was it your doing, or was there something about the company culture that allowed you to embed AI so deeply?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this has been our kind of secret sauce, really. That's let us do what we're very proud of so far. So yeah, let's wind the clock back a little bit. So I was in a non-AI role a couple of years ago. I was setting up our creative technology service. So build websites and lovely installations, museums, all that kind of stuff. Really exciting thing. And I'm a techie, I guess, by background. I've, like I said, worn a lot of hats, but I'm a technologist by background. So I'm generally skeptical. But with AI, I adopted a relatively skeptical position. And then it was actually our CEO, Nan, who founded the company, who's very senior. Her day job does not involve AI, but she picked up on it as something that was going to transform business. And really, a couple of conversations with her, I realized I'd been quite parochial and closed-minded about seeing AI. I used GitHub Copilot in early days and stuff, and I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. But as soon as I had that moment, I could see it everywhere. So that senior level buy-in from the senior team, the founders of the business, who you might expect, they're more experienced, they're older, you might expect maybe they just not to take such an interest. Has been hugely important because we've been able to put all the resources that we've covered already, put all the time and energy to really focus on it to get through that sort of cynicism gap. I think a lot of particularly tech agencies end up adopting. So that's been the secret sauce and that's carried through. So our most sophisticated users of AI are the most senior people in the business.
Mm.
We've got some amazing, just hired 10 new grads. They're all brilliant, super intelligent. They're all absolutely getting the grips with AI. But the real value comes from people who've got so much experience in their domain and in knowing what a good looks like,
Mm.
using it. And that makes all the difference. And any organization that doesn't have like really genuinely board level buy-in for AI is going to struggle with implementing it because you just can't unless you know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. We're going to come back to that point about seniority and how that impacts use and what it means for the kind of future of staffing in our businesses and all that kind of stuff. But you're talking about the seniors embracing this tech the most and being the most enthusiastic, perhaps. Have you seen any resistance anywhere in the organization, or anyone that's been a little bit, not individuals obviously, but teams perhaps, that are a bit less excited?
I mean, yes, it isn't sort of individual teams or even individuals. It is particular workflows that are quite resistant. So,
Mm.
I mean, resistance, no, and I think that's because we've been really clear. Like we've set our standout very clear and
Mm-hmm.
said this is where we believe we're going, and we haven't had anyone turn around and say no, I won't do it. But the resistance is, partially it's that thing I talked about earlier. Yes, sure, it all sounds great and brilliant, but I've got my job to do. I don't have time to go down this rabbit hole. Sorry, thank you very much. And that level of resistance is totally understandable,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to handhold them and get them through it, and we have, right? So that's not been a massive problem. The other resistance, like I say, has been kind of on a workflow basis, and it's where, the tools you've been using, the ways you're set up, just don't work with AI in the way you want them to.
Mm.
So a classic example is, if you've got an Adobe setup, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Adobe Illustrator and InDesign, things like that, they have some great AI tools built into the platform, but it's still a manual workflow. That's how you do it. You're designing a poster or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
your social media post, you do it in a particular way, right? Whereas the more AI native platforms like Canva and things like that are easier to adapt to that new world.
Mm-hmm.
And the individuals who are used to using a particular system, you know, they will see AI use as a shortcut in some places. Um, in my mind, it's all about understanding, look, what's the genuine value that you genuinely add as part of your job? Because people don't necessarily understand their own value sometimes. And
Mm-hmm.
that's in good and bad ways. But some people are hugely creative, but think their value lies in, manually moving things around on a screen. And it's getting through that point and saying, no, no, no. The value is all your amazing intelligence and creativity and all the things you can do. The tool you're using is completely irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as it does what you want it to do, like it should free you to be able to step away from these very, very, very standardized tools that you may have used for years.
Mm-hmm.
So I run these roundtables where I get clients and friends of the agency and people together. We have a Chatham House rules, confidential discussion, and it always comes up. And you can see people nodding. They're like, I know I should use AI. My organization said it's fine to use AI. I know fundamentally that I'm still producing great work or better work. I'm doing it faster. But if someone asks me whether I use AI to do it, I feel a bit ashamed. And it's a killer, right? Because
Mm.
and I can see why. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not that I don't fully appreciate, and I think in areas like art, do I want to read an AI written novel? No.
Mm-hmm.
But could having those two things be the same thing in your mind is quite, it really holds you back. If you are confident in what you're producing, and you should be, because you shouldn't ever just be chucking stuff to AI and getting it to do things. If you really are taking the same care you would always take and bringing all your expertise, all your creativity to bear, then it's the same thing. You shouldn't have any shame, which I don't think will stop people feeling ashamed, but it's something
Mm.
organizations have to massively get over. And we've certainly had a sort of, you know, quite controversial things like we've had an AI art competition
Mm.
and things that, are not necessarily super, super, super popular.
Mm-hmm.
People do have a sort of like ickiness factor to them. But I think, you know, letting people know it's okay to play with these tools, okay to experiment with them, okay to use them for all these things, you're not going to get anywhere otherwise.
Absolutely. I was smiling because I thought of a terrible analogy, which probably not worth mentioning. But like like the whole online dating thing, there used to be a lot of shame around that, and now it's just a thing, and it's how people meet. So maybe we will shed the shame, but it just takes some time.
I love that analogy. It's true. You know what? It actually underlines what we're going through, which is a massive cultural change,
Mhm.
societal change. And businesses can't do that on their own. They're not going to be able to. They can put their best foot forward. But no, it'll be very interesting to see where people fall on this in 3, 4, 5 years.
Absolutely. So, you've embedded AI and are using it across the organization, but are you able to comment on where the biggest impact has been so far? Is it like on reporting, on resourcing delivery, like in the operational side of things, perhaps?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we can more easily see the impact in delivery.
Hmm.
So generally speaking, organizations flow into patterns, I guess, that work for them on an operational point of view. And that can somewhat be a bit of a disadvantage because you've got some kind of rigidity. You've got a sort of, once you set, I'm using a jelly analogy, I realize, I'm not sure why, but it flows and then it sets, or maybe cement, something like that.
Hmm.
But once it's set, it's quite hard to get out of it, and and they can be quite inflexible. So then we're not immune to that as not this organization at all, and most of my clients aren't. So lots of operational side is difficult. The bit where it's easiest to flex is where you meet your customer or where you meet your end user. So those teams often have the highest variability of output and have the highest flexibility to adjust what they do. So in delivery,
Hmm.
that's where we see like immediate change, immediate impact, and we're able to measure. I think it is exceptionally hard to measure AI impact, and people have not managed it particularly well so far.
Hmm.
But you can see it in delivery teams that what they're producing is quicker, faster. You need fewer people, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
For operational teams, it is much harder to gauge the level of impact. But once people adopt a particular method within the organization for managing invoicing or whatever it might be, once they find an AI use and switch to it,
Hmm.
it has this kind of knock-on effect, this domino effect that they've seen the impact once, and then they're like, hold on, well, we can do this, and we can do this, and we can do this.
Hmm.
The other thing that limits operational impact within those things like finance and stuff is there is a certain acceptance of a variability of output for delivery sometimes, like what you're producing can sometimes be a bit vague and it can be at various levels. Operationally, so the business teams within the organization often just don't have that as an option.
Hmm.
So it either needs to work or it doesn't. So you need to design AI-driven workflows to have fallbacks. And, if an AI scans an invoice, it needs to have a way to say, I don't know what this is. I don't know
Hmm.
which client this refers to. I don't know what to do with it. And building those things that you can actually cause like what looks like additional work. It looks like it makes it more complicated. And that can often hold things back, I think.
Hmm. Luke, on that note, my question is like, how have your clients reacted to your organization embracing AI so deeply? Are you getting questions? Are you getting pushback? Are you, because sometimes we hear about clients asking for budgets to be reduced if you're able to do something faster and easier, or questions around intellectual property. So, how have you handled that and what have you heard?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I think when we set out on this journey, we were prepared for more questions and more, uneasiness. And what we found actually is very, very little. We have a couple of clients who, for various reasons, don't want AI being used in outputs, and that's absolutely fine. That's fine. Something that we can write into contract. It's not an issue.
Hmm.
But the majority of clients, they just appreciate that they're getting stuff faster. They're getting stuff that's, maybe it's been checked a few more times so I can check things through. Maybe their brand style's been applied in a more persistent way because we're able to do that more. We've had very, very few situations where people have pushed back and said, you know, well, I can't think of any situations where people have pushed back and said, we are unhappy with the AI use here. It's interesting. We did a project for a large client in the luxury space, which is an internal comms project. And it was around, basically just getting a library together of people. They didn't want to use their staff. They wanted to use generic people that they could use as in part of advertising, internal advertising for internal comms use. And we sort of went to them with, a couple of options. It was when we were just starting out using AI for image generation. We said, look, here's the the normal spreadsheet, the stock library stuff we would have given you before, and here's the AI generated version. And we kind of expected them to turn around and go, well, we'll have the stock library. We don't want this AI generated version. And we went in, presented it, and then just as an afterthought, someone said, "Oh, it's a shame they're wearing like a white t-shirt. I wish it was a red t-shirt." And we were like, "Oh, it's AI, so we can just change it. That's fine. It's easy. We just ask for a red t-shirt and we get it to regenerate." And that just totally switched them on. They'd be like, "Well, hold on a second, that's brilliant."
Mm.
And that's not being back on time or whatever. That's not productivity. That's just something you couldn't do before that you can do now.
Hmm.
So that's, I guess, the positive side. You know, in terms of like how it affects what we charge as an agency, it means we have to be really, really confident that we're providing value.
Hmm.
It's never really been about the time, because you can hire someone who's less experienced for 3 days and you can hire someone who's really experienced for half a day and they can produce the same outputs,
Hmm.
right? So it's never really been this kind of fiction that agencies sell time. They sell value.
Hmm.
And the value hasn't changed. In fact, it's got better. So it hasn't really been an issue for us. Either that or we just have the world's best clients, which may be true.
That's a really good way of looking at it. So what about the question of intellectual property then? Does that come up? And especially, I don't know if with text based, I personally feel less concerned, but often
Yeah.
when it comes to image generation, stuff like that, that question
Yeah.
always comes up.
Yeah. Well, there's two things here, right? So there's the right for the model to use the IP in the first place. So, that it's allowed to train itself on all this data and generate images based on the image data. And then there's the second thing, which is, what IP rights do you have once you've generated it? Now, the stance I take, just to be conservative on the latter, is, if you need the output to be IP protected,
Hmm.
if you want to make sure no one else is ever going to use that image, for example, then you can't use AI for it,
Mm.
unfortunately, right? In terms of generating a new image, you can't. And that's because the legal framework is not there yet for us to be able to say, this is something you have the right to. Unfortunate, whatever you personally believe, we can't guarantee that. So that side of things is relatively clear for now,
Hmm.
I think. It may be frustrating, but it's clear. The other side of the coin, that, what is acceptable, what these models are trained on, how they're using copyrighted data, is much, much more complex. And
Mm.
look, we don't have an answer from a legal point of view. Every territory, every country in the world is coming up with their own answers to this question. We saw the kind of Anthropic case recently where basically the judgment was, actually you are allowed to train your model on whatever you like, even copyrighted material, but you've got to own every single thing that you put in. So it's kind of like, well, it's kind of a weird halfway house. I'm not
Mm.
entirely sure that it's very helpful, but it is only part of an answer. So, we can't solve that ourselves.
Hmm.
We explain all of these things to our clients and explain, what we believe the situation is. And then I think it comes down to, it's a philosophical and ethical issue. My personal thought is, you know, when you are copying something, you
Hmm.
can copy something like a photocopier,
Hmm.
or you can copy something like a brain, right? So if I read a book and then am inspired by parts of the book, or like write in a style that's a bit like the book I've read, it's not about copying out passages.
Hmm.
I see that as being a perfectly valid form of, I mean, that's how our brains work. We
Mm.
take an input, we process it, and turn it into outputs. If you're photocopying something and then passing off during, that's totally different. I would personally put AI in the sort of brain category in terms of how I feel what it's doing.
Hmm.
But there are other people who would say, no, it's the same thing as a photocopier. But this won't go away. This is one of those
Yeah.
things, we think about photography when it was first launched, it's exactly the same thing. The printing press, we go through these, society and governments have to make that decision for us. And at the moment, it's still a gray area.
Hmm. So you are finding clients then that are comfortable with using that kind of creative and the visuals that are being created by these
Oh, 100%.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, completely. I mean, we've made entirely AI generated videos for clients, where they've specifically requested that as well. It's not even that sort of we're saying we can do this cheaper because we're using AI. Like a lot
Hmm.
of the time, it's a creative choice. Which is interesting. We have some clients where, for operational reasons, in defense and things like that, they can't use any real imagery
Mm.
of their workplaces or of their people.
Sure.
And AI is perfect for that, right? You can generate something that feels right, but isn't, putting anyone in any danger. So there's lots of good reasons why you would use AI for those
Hmm.
kind of things.
Excellent. Are you also, it sounded like you might also be doing consulting work for clients, especially your team perhaps. Can you tell us a bit about that? What that looks like and what that might be?
Yeah. So once we started like looking into AI ourselves, we realized that there were a load of lessons that we were learning and good practice we adopted and things we were hearing from the industry and research that we'd done that a lot of our clients could benefit from. So we were doing these AI roundtables, I think I mentioned earlier, where we get clients and people in a room and talk to them about, their use of AI and answer some questions and all the things. And out of a lot of those, we got a lot of people saying, well, actually, come and talk to our board, come and talk to our COO, whatever, try and, explain what you just said to me, try and explain to them. So we've now developed that really into a practice, into a part of what we do. So we offer AI consultancy, not just within a marketing context, but with the general context. And that's been, for some organizations, that's meant rolling out their entire strategy, right? So an AI strategy which takes into account some best principles, what they're going to do. For other clients, it's meant, we set something up for them where we try a pilot and see whether that works and test something, proof of concept. Maybe it's a little tool that we build for them. Maybe it's us doing something and seeing whether the AI can help. And we've run, lots of little projects now really that are building into quite sort of a portfolio of things that we've been asked to do that we've been able to demonstrate genuine sort of value. And I think part of the issue for a lot of these organizations is there's nowhere clear to turn. So, you've got the management consultants, you've got your IT suppliers, you've got a lot of people saying, we'll answer this part of the AI puzzle for you. But then when you actually talk to them, a lot of the time it's, oh, we'll answer a data issue for you. We'll cleanse your data, or we'll take on a big project where we completely transform this bit. But a lot of the time, the real value comes from quite short, sharp engagements that can show real value very quickly. And we're quite well set up to do that in the world that we live in, because we're quite nimble anyway, and because we're kind of used to getting under the skin of a client's needs and all that kind of stuff. So it's been really interesting, and I've learned huge amounts from talking to other organizations about their rollouts. So I would say that's just like one massive bit of advice I would give anyone looking at this is go to as much stuff as you can, talk to as many people, because everyone has a perspective and everyone has a learning that they learned 3 days ago that you can immediately apply.
Definitely. And right now, because your team are doing so much of that, I think it creates a really great USP for as well. So that's a really good benchmark for everyone listening to this.
Well, it also allows us to validate it, right? Because we often, especially in operations roles, you're often working in this sort of weird little bubble where you don't get to see. It's hard to tell from within an organization whether you're doing it right. There's a lot of insecurity, particularly because it's such a fast-moving world. Are we actually doing it right? Even though we think we're doing it, and being able to work with other organizations has given us the confidence to say, yeah, we know what we're doing. This is great. But also, you get so much out just being able to scan the landscape better.
Look, for the next few questions, I'm going to put to you some things that I've read or heard, things I hear. They might be things that you've said, but one of those things is that there's this kind of anxiety around AI is going to replace agencies and consultancies because clients are going to be able to do all this stuff themselves. What's your view on that?
It's a totally genuine anxiety. And I think something that every agency and every service provider really, in whatever sector needs to really grapple with. I don't think it's existential in the sense of, I still think the role of expert outsiders in business is always going to be relevant. And that involves people who can marshal and understand the correct levers to pull in your situation. And it involves a lot of context building and a lot of expertise building. And I think that's valuable stuff that is hard for an AI to do. But that said, yeah, every single agency, small business, service provider owner should be looking at saying, what are we actually doing that our clients want to buy? Is it all this stuff we've been doing for years, all the admin, all the status reporting, all the reassurance paperwork, all the things that, are easy to do and visible and feel valuable? Or is it the actual results? And what are those actual results? And why have people hired us to do this and not hired other people? Because unless you're really, really asking what is probably actually in many cases quite a difficult question, you're going to just be caught on the back foot, because a lot of the things, like you say, a lot of the things like, surface level research, looking into industries, writing business plans. These things are totally achievable by AI in some form now.
Hmm.
And your client may not be sophisticated enough to spot when it's not good, but also it may just be good. It may be good enough. And clients only want good enough. They want the level of good they need, not the level of good your 40 years of craft prepared for them. So
Hmm.
it's uncomfortable, I think. It's less anxious than uncomfortable, but I think it is something that we all need to grapple with and kind
Hmm.
of really get our heads around. What are we here for? Okay.
Hmm. That's a really good point. Reinventing yourself so you remain relevant rather than
Yeah,
just hanging on to what you've always done, because that's a path to becoming obsolete.
100%.
I read a post on your LinkedIn, and I'd love for you to talk us through your thinking with this. With regards to AI, you'd written, reducing graduate schemes and scrapping junior roles is the single biggest mistake professional services businesses are making at the moment. That's really interesting. And, I was just scanning through the headlines. I was doing a bit of Googling prior to this about this Gen Z job crisis thing that seemingly is related to this. So tell us your thoughts on this.
I mean, this is like a massive beer my bonnet at the moment. So I think businesses are being bonkers. They're taking the most like vibrant talent that's existed for a long time. Like it is an absolute buyer's market for really good people at the moment. And they're saying, well, we haven't got a bunch of low level work to give you anymore, so we're not going to hire you, which is insane because all you do is you give them higher value work.
Mm,
We've just hired 10 grads. They've come in. Very little of the work that they do is what we would recognize as what a grad would do in our industry 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And that is fantastic. So don't look at your workflows and say, oh, we don't have all this low level work to do anymore. We don't need to hire people. Hire the brilliant people and get them working on the important stuff. And I just fundamentally don't understand why more businesses aren't doing that. And you see it, if you look at coding, which is a really good example, there was a massive, the number of junior software engineers being hired has fallen off a cliff. But if you look at why, it's because the structures around the way coding, companies that build code work are predicated on the idea that you have this kind of apprenticeship where the most senior people kind of draw you up and bring you up in the ways that you should be doing things.
hmm
But if you've got an effective DevOps situation, if you've got effective tools to manage the quality of the output, let the reins off. Allow the brilliant new people to try something creative and different,
mm.
and they might surprise you by doing something that you never consider. So yeah, I'm very, as you can see, I'm very motivated by this thing. But I think it's great for us because we're leaping in and grabbing people
Hmm.
who are absolutely brilliant, who are being left behind by people who will be kicking themselves in a couple of years' time.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? That is really interesting. Just to kind of dig into that a little bit more, just getting my own head around this. I think the feeling might be that, we were saying earlier that the seniors have been most enthusiastic in embracing AI at your organization. And, until now, they were the ones that maybe came up with the ideas and they asked the juniors to execute. And now the seniors have these tools that allow them to execute a task exactly to their vision. So you're saying that, the juniors can be given kind of more, what was the word you used? More
Yeah, high value
higher
tasks.
value
Yeah.
work. But I guess the question is that, often we saw training as you work your way up the ranks and learn how the business works. So I think people might wonder, well, how do you give them higher value tasks when they're just fresh out of uni and don't know how to do some of that stuff and don't know how the business works and don't know
Well,
how
I
the
mean,
creative ideation or whatever.
yeah, yeah. So you have to be patient and excellent at delegation. And those are two things that organizations struggle with, managers struggle with in
Hmm.
organizations. So, yes, if you're working on the basis that you set a task, then it gets passed to someone more senior who then polishes it and puts it up the chain to someone more senior. And which is how, we take public relations, which I happen to know, the idea that you have like the most junior person will write a draft of a press release, then the next person will, plus it's kind of a bizarre way to work, really. And what you now have is with AI is the ability for AI to do a lot of those pieces of the puzzle.
Hmm.
And what you need is someone bright and intelligent who can understand what good looks like, come up with ideas. And that is something that can be communicated really well. But also, if you're hiring the right people, it's something they will be able to apply their judgment to.
Hmm.
So as long as you're providing the supportive space, as long as you're providing the parameters, as long as you're leading by example, particularly when it comes to creative outputs, you will get a lot more out of people than you expect
Mm,
from them rather.
mhm,
You're right though. When it comes to like customer service, a really good example, understanding how to operate with clients, that's where you say, look, we've saved X amount of hours with AI on this side. We can devote more time now to teaching this person how to be the best client handler in the world. So it's just remapping your effort, frankly. But also the horizons are shrinking all the time in terms of what we consider to be, you know, you know, what's needed to do the job, and that's because AI gives you a lot of answers.
mhm.
You have to be able to interpret it. Who can have a stab at a lot of things that would not have been in your toolbox years and years ago? If I wanted to brief a designer, I can't draw. I can't draw. I can't. I'm artistically bereft.
Mhm.
It's very sad. Um, but if I briefed a designer, I would go over and talk to them and I'd explain in words and I'd probably give them a document that they would feel very aggrieved at having to read. I can now generate something that's close to what's in my mind and use that as something to go brief them with. So that saves us all time. It's not that I go over and say, make it like this.
Mhm.
I go over and say, this is what's in my head. Let's talk it through.
Mm,
And all of that ability to do things that you literally couldn't do before
mm.
means the role of junior people it changes. They're able to bring themselves to bear on more tasks. They're more useful in more situations.
Really, really interesting. Another question then I have is, how do you feel about like your sentiment around what it means for business sizes? Are the bigger agencies going to contract, or do you think things are going to remain stable, or what's going to be the impact on that?
I mean, the holy grail is, you do more with less,
Hmm.
which people will and are, right? I mean, people are spending less time on frustrating things and are more productive, certainly for my organization, but
Hmm.
everywhere I can see this is true. The holy grail is you keep the income at the same level or you increase the income by doing more of it and doing higher value work.
Hmm.
Things. Is that easy? No, it is not. It's also very hard in the current like macroeconomic environment, which is messy
Hmm.
and a complicated. We live in a very complicated world. It's a difficult one to navigate. So I think probably we will see companies becoming smaller that already exist. Certainly, if I was starting up my own company tomorrow,
Hmm.
I would hire many, many fewer people from the word go than I would normally hire.
Right.
And I would be much more generalist in who I'm hiring rather than hiring specialists for particular things I want to do, which is really exciting. If you're an entrepreneurial at all, it gives you this massive additional scope to like be very flexible in what you're
Hmm.
doing. You don't have to make, offshoring decisions every, 5 minutes to try and figure out which things you can afford in house and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
You're much more capable of trying things, finding out what the right mix is. So I think, the idea of the first, I forget who said it, but this idea that the first $1 billion company with one employee, which we haven't seen yet, I don't
Hmm.
think it will happen. It is true, but I think agencies and professional service providers probably aren't ever going to be particularly effective as sole trader
Mm.
organizations. So I think we won't see that exactly in our space.
On a related note, then, just digging at that point, do you think there's still going to be space for both big agencies and small agencies? Or is the future brighter for one or the other?
It's really hard. I mean, my obvious answer is, well, it's a sweet spot that we happen to be exactly in. But that's from what I see because I can only see my own organization really from that point of view. It it will it will matter a lot to clients going forward who the humans are and where they are in their organization. And some clients will want the same level of humans or more humans. And they will want to be reassured that all the AI workflows, which they accept are great and whatever, are being overseen by like increasingly intelligent teams of humans. So I don't know whether that means that small agencies are not going to get any smaller. I can suspect it does. Big agencies, where a lot of it is process driven, and they have a particular like process they go through and it generates a particular creative output. If I were in one of those, I would be more worried
Mm,
for sure.
mm,
I think it's more easy to formalize the role of AIs once your client accept that, they're buying a process, they're buying a mechanism more than they're buying individuals.
mhm.
I think for smaller and mid-sized agencies where the clients really clearly value an individual anyway, I can't see it being such an issue. So
Mm.
yeah, if I had to say where I'd be most worried, it would be in the big agency groups at the moment.
Luke, we're coming up towards the end, so I just wanted to ask you one last question. If there's an ops leader that's listening to this, thinking, they're feeling behind, but they're feeling inspired by some of the stuff that you've said today, what would be your advice on what they should do to
Yeah.
really start accelerating their use of AI?
So when I go into an organization, one of the first things that I will recommend is that people become AI fluent. So that's not, learning a particular tool. That is understanding fundamentally what AI is. So I think I mentioned it before, it's not about machine learning techniques or anything like that. It's just about fundamentally understanding what's different between this technology, which is a genuinely new thing we've never seen before, and all the tools they've used in the past. And I think, although it sounds obvious, people aren't doing that. They're not taking the time to understand what's really happening, I guess, behind the scenes. They don't need to become experts in like particular AI models. They do not need to go and look at benchmarks. They do not need to start like tracking who's buying who. I mean, it's interesting, but it's not important. They need to understand fundamentally, organizationally, the new tools that they've got that are out there. What can they really, really do, and where are they best used? And I think that once you have that conversation with people, their mind opens up and they do start thinking, well, hold on a second, but there's this we could use that for, rather than seeing it as just a sort of a tool set. So I would say that's the main thing. And there's loads of help out there, right? So the best thing is all the AI companies are putting out huge amounts of really good resources around AI fluency. Anthropic has a fantastic free course. Microsoft has one as well. OpenAI has one that's more specifically around their tools, but it's also good. Like the training is free and available and just as good as anything you're going to get from any sort of formalized training course
Cool.
now. So I would just go for it. Like self-education is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And if you're in a position to lead by example and set the standard for your organization, do it. Experiment. Don't be curious.
Really, really good advice. Luke, it sounds like you do consulting work for other businesses as well. So I'm just wondering where people can find you and connect with you and speak to you about that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yes, we work with anyone who would like to find out more about applying AI effectively in your organization, about AI fluency, any things I mentioned in this podcast. We'd love to work with you. We work with big, small business. We also work with, other agencies as well. So
Mm.
we're non-competitive. We'll happily talk to whoever wants to chat to us. And if you want to find out more, if you hit www.for.agency, FOUR.agency, that's our web address. You can find, the contact form and there will get to me. Absolutely. I'm also on LinkedIn. Just Luke Alexander is my handle, and I'd love to connect with anyone who wants to know more.
Amazing. We are already over time. I could talk to you for another hour on this. This has been such a great conversation. So I really appreciate you being here.
Thanks so much for inviting me. It's been really, really good to chat to you.
Thanks, Luke. What Luke's done at Four is one of the most advanced examples of AI transformation that I've ever seen. My biggest takeaway from this conversation is how deliberate they've been, embedding AI not just as a novelty, but as a capability in their organization. They've treated AI fluency as a company-wide skill, not a side project for their teams. They've built a center of excellence to test, pilot, and operationalize ideas before they roll them out. And they've got the training support to help embed this. They've also had true top-down buy-in from the CEO right down to the newest grad, which has made the cultural change stick. That's where I think the rest of us need to aim for, from experimentation to integration. So I hope you're feeling as inspired as I am from what Luke had to say. We're coming towards the end of the episode, but given we've been talking about AI, one thing I can't not mention, which I'm quite excited about, is MCP, Model Context Protocol. If you haven't heard much about this yet, that's okay. It's pretty new technology, but I do think this is going to lead to a huge shift in the way we work. MCP is essentially the bridge between AI platforms and your business systems. It lets tools like ChatGPT or Claude securely plug into your other platforms like Scoro, Gmail, Slack, Jira, and so on, not just pulling data, but taking action, even coordinating multi-tool workflows, all with just a prompt on your part. And Scoros just launched their MCP server, which you can test drive if you're a customer. So imagine saying something like summarize the client meeting, create the action items, and log them in the Scoro task. And just like that, it's done. And that's just the most basic example. It's still early days for this technology across the board, but this is where AI for operations really starts to take shape. Now, if you've enjoyed today's episode, please share it with someone that would enjoy it too. I'm sure there's somebody in your organization or a friend in another business that would be quite inspired about hearing about how AI can be more deeply embedded in their business. Next, join the conversation when you see Luke or me posting about it on LinkedIn. And of course, sign up for the handbook newsletter so you get a cheat sheet with the key takeaways straight in your inbox from each episode. The link is in the episode notes. That's it for me this week. Thank you so much for joining us. This podcast is brought to you by Scoro, a platform designed for agencies and consultancies, which allows you to manage your projects, finances, and resources, all from one system. This is a platform I brought in at a previous workplace, which completely transformed the way we worked, and which I've recommended to clients of my own. You can sign up for a free trial on Scoro.com. That's SCORO.com. Or reach out to me, Harv Nagra, on LinkedIn if you'd like to hear about some of my experiences.